The Uneducated Economist here. So in this video, we're going to talk about the Bitcoin standard and how it would do more harm than good. You're hearing a lot coming from the powers that be out there, including those of major industries like that of Elon Musk, talking about how ending the Fed would be a good idea. And I don't know if necessarily moving into a Bitcoin standard is their expectations or their ideas. But for somehow getting out of maybe using the dollar or ending the central banking system, and then therefore you would have to have something in place in order to do commerce with. And a lot of people are calling for Bitcoin, saying, hey, Bitcoin is the perfect solution to this problem that we are facing with the dollar and inflation and, value of the dollars being, constantly losing its purchasing power, and that the idea of holding on to Bitcoin would then be a deflationary currency in the sense that your holding power or your purchasing power of holding Bitcoin could only increase over time, and somehow this is like a benefit to the people out there. And in a lot of ways, if you are in a position in which that you could acquire Bitcoin during that time and become a saver, then yes, it would be a very good move for you, as your purchasing power would get better on account of your holding of Bitcoin. The only problem that we would face here in the United States is that we are in deficit trade. Now, I think this is important to understand, that if you are in deficit trade, what you are doing is you're importing stuff and you're exporting money. Now, if we didn't have the debt-based currency like we do, we wouldn't be exporting money, which is essentially debt. Now, money and currency are two different things, but if we just kind of consider the dollar money, we are exporting money when we import stuff. And as a nation that does manufacture but doesn't manufacture enough, we would be in a position in which that if we were in a Bitcoin standard or a gold standard or just a limited currency standard, which a lot of people are advocating for, we would end up importing all this stuff and exporting all our money, and we would all fall into poverty and misery. And now this is not something that I hear a lot of people like Elon Musk or anybody else bringing up when they talk about the awesomeness of Bitcoin. Yes, it does have some features to it. It does have some features to it that would definitely bring a value to the saver out there, the person who is able to acquire those Bitcoins and hold on to them for the future. Yes, it would be a very good position. It would also limit government in a lot of ways. They wouldn't be able to just go out there and just go spending like crazy like they do now, with the idea that they have access to debt. You would have to have actual access to Bitcoin. And if you were a government, you would have to tax your citizens, and taxing the citizens on a fixed commodity such as that would limit them on how much they could ever possibly acquire. And because of that, that would make a limited government, which a lot of people say, hey man, this is where we want to be. And I'm in agreement with that. Like, I don't like government being as big as they are. I don't like the fact that government's in my life. In fact, if I can make government irrelevant, I would. But now we are sitting in a position in which that not everybody feels that way, and not everybody has the understanding on how to deal with the fact that we would have a limited currency out there and not the fiat currency that we do. So you're not just going to be able to just switch over to a commodity-based currency like gold, or even the digital-based like Bitcoin, without creating some serious issues going on with the economy, not right here in the United States. And mainly what that is being the manufacturer. If you're not a manufacturer, the most industrious nations that are out there are going to take all your money from you, and they're going to leave you in poverty and misery. Again, this is not something that is very well discussed. And so when I hear about all this narrative being put out there about how we should fire Jerome Powell and start moving towards a Bitcoin standard, I think to myself, why don't they ever bring up the argument that firing Jerome Powell changes all but just, it doesn't change anything but one vote, right, on the FOMC. Jerome Powell is not the person in charge of the Federal Reserve. He's not even in charge of monetary policy. He's in charge of his one vote and communicating to the public out there on behalf of the Federal Open Market Committee. The Federal Open Market Committee is made up of many people. It's made up of 7 governors. It's made up of 12 presidents of the regional banks. These people alternate through the FOMC. How they get to that position doesn't come down to one president decision on who everybody is being, or all the people being made up in the FOMC doesn't come down to that presidential decision. Right? It does on many presidents over a long time. These governors can have terms of up to 14 years. Like technically could span 4 different administrations. Now, this is the topic that most people do not bring up when they discuss about what it is that they can do about the Federal Reserve. And there is no changing this overnight. Is there a way that you can change the way that the Federal Reserve is chartered and create new laws and rules and all this other stuff? Absolutely they could. I mean, there is no reason why they couldn't. We have Congress, we have, a process in which that could go down. But the problem that most people are facing is that they do not have any kind of reasonable alternative to the Federal Reserve. Anytime you ever bring up the fact that, well, we could just use gold or we could just use Bitcoin, nobody ever brings up the fact that there's the Cantillon effect at play, in which that your manufacturing base has left. And if you go and start purchasing the production of the entire world on a limited amount of currency, you will export all your dollars and they will be gone, and or all your money, whether it's Bitcoin or gold, and you will be suffering in misery and poverty until you become an industrious person who can then provide products or services and skills to those people out there of the globe who cannot manufacture it as cheap as you. Right? See, this is where the United States is sitting in a very compromised position, is that we really enjoy our standard of living here. The problem with enjoying the standard of living is that we really can't afford it. And because we can't afford it, we constantly take out debt. And because the world is convinced that our debt is as good as gold, we continue to operate in this fashion. And there's no elected official that's going to come in and change any of that. There's no group of people who can come in and say, hey, we're going to switch this around overnight and everybody's going to be happy with this idea. In fact, if you notice, most of these people who are calling for a firing of Jerome Powell or an ending of the Federal Reserve or something of that nature always say that they need more power over the Federal Reserve. See, they don't like the Federal Reserve unless they have the power over it. Remember what George Bush said back in the day, a dictatorship is fine so long as I'm the dictator? This is what these people communicate out there when they talk about ending the Fed, when they talk about firing Jerome Powell, when they talk about how the government needs more power from a political standpoint over the Federal Reserve. This is exactly what they are saying, is that the dictatorship is fine so long as they are the dictator. And now what I find very amusing about this is that the more you start to understand it, the more you start to position yourself in a way that says, hey, I'm not going to be exposed to any of this stuff. See, I myself am not a fan of the idea of going back to a gold standard. I'm prepared. Like, I'm mentally prepared, think I've done enough study, tried to position myself in a way that if we did go back to a gold standard, I think I could handle myself. But I don't feel that most people out there have any idea on what it is that they would need to do in order to handle themselves properly to keep from being completely devastated by the business cycles that would occur from the concentration of wealth that would come from a gold standard. It's going to happen. And by understanding it, you can position yourself to say, yeah, okay, I can then accumulate a savings during the good times, so when the bad times hit, I would have something that will carry me through. Most people don't think that way. Most people sit in a position in which that they extend themselves out to the very end of their paycheck every single month in hopes that they are able to make it again to the next month. This is how most people live. Like, what was it? The average American couldn't come up with $400 in case of an emergency? How is it that they are planning for the future on a gold standard if this is the typical life that they live? They wouldn't be able to. And so when you have a government who is limited on what it is that they can even do to provide help for the people, if you were in a gold standard, what you are going to find is massive bread lines and people standing on the street wondering what it is that they can do during the downtime. This is what people just don't seem to want to explain during these ideas of ending the Federal Reserve or reestablishing a Bitcoin or gold standard. They don't seem to want to bring up the fact that there would be a Cantillon effect that would take place, leaving the people in pain and misery, but yet they seem to say, well, at least your prices of the stuff wouldn't go up. Right now, again, I'm cool with it. Like, I'm down. Let's do it, man. Let's get on this gold standard. Let's go back. Let's go to a Bitcoin standard. Right. I'm thinking I would probably do quite well in that sort of environment. But most people will suffer the consequences of it. And this United States not being the manufacturer of being manufacturing enough stuff to not be in a trade deficit, we would end up exporting all our money and be in pain and misery within no time at all. All right, 10 minutes into this, we're going to keep it a fairly short video. Going up here, we got buck 52,000. I don't want my assets to be money or currency. Donald, BTC doesn't compete for expensive, useful energy. Rather, usually the wasted energy gets used to mine BTC. Like, share, subscribe. Yeah, thank you very much. Please do so. We got dishes up in the house. Thank you for being here. All right, Andrew Jackson era. Study Andrew Jackson. Yeah, Andrew Jackson had this country. This is funny about Andrew Jackson is that he left this country, like he had this country in a position in which that we had no debt. Right? It was one of the few times that this nation was actually debt-free. And we were also very well devastated at the time. Now, granted, it was a very different environment to be conducting yourself in. And you had a whole change of the way that the country was operating, and I mean we could just talk about it for like days. But ultimately what Andrew Jackson did is he killed the banks, right? He left this nation completely debt-free, but we were also quite devastated economically from it. Did it give us a great position to go from? Absolutely it did, right? But it wasn't exactly the awesomeness that people want to seem to think it was at the time. I think like people look at it and say, if you are debt free, then you're winning. And I think in a lot of ways that is true for the individual saying, man, I'm not a slave to this debt world environment. However, if you think about what it is that people are doing with debt nowadays, it is so much different from what it is that's in our minds about what it is that debt does. Like most people think about debt being like putting you in slavery. You end up owing interest to the creditor out there. And although this is true, a lot of people have figured out how to take debt and then buy cash flowing assets with it. And with this ability to buy cash flowing assets with it, you are able to be in a position in which capital investment then has the return that you are looking for. Really, this only operates within a financial system that is of the style that we have today, which again, like a lot of people would look at and say, no, that's the problem right there, is that the capitalistic mindset that borrowing money to buy cash flowing assets has now separated the rich from the poor. Absolutely agree with that. Like that is not a lie. That is very true to the situation that we are now facing. Here's the deal though. You have the ability to do that too. It's not unlimited to you. You can do it too. I mean, if you screwed up your credit, if you screwed up your opportunities, you did all that, well, then that's your fault, right? I mean, not everybody makes good decisions in their life and then don't get the opportunity that they wish for. Hey, I mean, tough luck, right? But most people out there have the ability to go out there, work hard, create a savings, get a loan, buy cash flowing assets. This is something that everybody has access to. Now, whether or not you do it, that's up to you, right? But this sort of environment wouldn't exist under a gold standard, right? It operates under this financial system that we have going. And it would happen underneath the gold standard as well, just in a much different fashion. Let's go check out this super chat we got here. Got it from Lewis. Thank you so much. The Spanish Empire went under because they had long-running inflation from mining gold instead of building useful stuff. Why work hard when you can just print? Well, yeah, and I think also, like, we also have to kind of understand that it was the ability to bring in new money. Right? If you can constantly bring in new money, then what you are going to find is that your system is going to continue to operate, right? And so if you think about it in the fashion that if you had a silver mine, right, that was bringing in the new money, as you were bringing in that new money and you started buying stuff, you started buying like this is the way the Cantillon effect really breaks it down. because I think using a silver mine, is a good way to explain it. So if you have a silver mine that just comes online, right? All of a sudden, this particular area finds they got the silver mine. The silver miners, they're going to have first access to the money. The people who own the mine, the people who work the mine, the people who are, closest to that new money coming in. They're going to have the first access to it. When they get that money, what they are going to end up doing is they're going to increase their consumption. Right? They're going to buy nicer cars, well, nicer cars, not back in the day, right? They're going to buy nicer houses, nicer clothes, nicer stuff. All these things are going to be, available to them because they have this new money. Because they have increased their consumption, right? What ends up happening is that increased consumption then creates the supply-demand imbalances. So the new money has come in. The people who had first access to it start spending that money. The people who had the money spent on them, like all the tailors and the bakers and the carpenters and all that, they're increasing their consumption as well. So as this new money is coming in and the people are starting to increase their consumption, what are they doing is creating the supply-demand imbalance. Now, the people at the end of the line, they suffer the most because now the prices are moving up, but they haven't gotten access to the money yet, right? Because they're at the end of the line. This is where the inequality starts to happen. And now, whether or not that money is coming in from a new mine, if it's coming in from trade, like you have a trade surplus, so you're producing a lot of stuff and exporting that stuff and importing money. So whether or not it's from the mine, from trade, from like even war effort, right? Going out there and conquering and taking, but also from debt issuance, just straight up offering debt out there to people to buy, right? All these things will bring in new money and it will have the same similar effect on the economy, which is the separation between the rich and the poor. Now, everything is cool so long as the new money continues to pour in. If the mine goes dry, then you have to be exporting stuff. If the exporting of stuff isn't enough, then you got to be conquering. If you're not conquering, you better be issuing out a lot of debt, right? All these ways of bringing in the new money. Once the new money turns off, everybody falls into poverty, right? The rich elite, everybody down at the bottom, all the manufacturers have already left. Everybody falls into poverty after this. And there's examples of this that happen throughout history. Now, does it look exactly the same? No, right? I mean, the Roman Empire looks different from, the Spanish Empire, different from, the American Empire here, because there's different times, different situations, different styles of bringing in that new money and how it is that they were conducting themselves doing that. All right. Moving on. Everything's melting up next couple of years. BTC is just starting. BTC getting pumped is great for the stock markets. Bitcoin isn't crashing, it's going to the moon. Bitcoin bros are the new legalize it dudes from 20 years ago. See, that's the funny thing about it is that I'm pro Bitcoin. Like, I buy Bitcoin every time I get paid. I buy like $50 worth once or twice a month. Maybe more if I can. But I don't believe that Bitcoin can be the answer to replacement of the fiat currency. Like, I mean, I see where it could serve a purpose inside of this, but what I see is a whole new world of major issues that are going to be taking place within the economies if there was an actual transition to a Bitcoin or gold standard. People have to understand that the Cantillon effect is real. It really happens. People have to understand that Gresham's law does exist in the economic forces that are out there. If you understand these things, then it would be a much easier way to argue whether or not you can go back to a Bitcoin or gold standard. But most of the time when I hear people talk about, oh no, we would have stable prices under a Bitcoin standard, wouldn't that be awesome? Say yes, right? Say yes to that, because that's really what they want you to say. But then they don't want to argue about how it is that it would create poverty and misery and slowing economies and concentration of wealth. Now, if you're already in the position of concentrating wealth, then hell yeah, you would want that, right? Of course you would, because you would be able to secure that wealth even more. Denying the people the ability to do what it is that you had done to acquire the wealth. It doesn't surprise me when I see these big money men talking in this fashion. Right? What they're essentially wanting to do is lock themselves in the position and then deny you the ability to get there. Because if you understood it from that fashion, that's really what they're trying to say. Is like, hey, you shouldn't be able to borrow money to buy cash flowing assets like we did in order to acquire the position that we did. We should deny you the ability to do that. And then even worse, put you on a limited amount of currency so there's no way that you would ever be able to do it. And all the wealth will be concentrated with us. I mean, that's what they're saying. Yeah. And again, like, I'm in a position in which that I would ride that wave up. Right. I'd be like, yeah, if that's what happened. Like, I feel that even the small limited amount of Bitcoin that I own would be worth an insane amount of money if that was to actually happen. Right. Because having half a Bitcoin is something that is very rare. But 42 million people could ever possibly do it. And considering how much Bitcoin is lost and still yet needs to be mined, there's very little chances that 42 million people could ever do what I have done. It's going to be far less than that. Yeah. All right. We are in a 2-year wave on everything. Thank you. Since 2009 of experience, some of us are just not allowed or preferred to access. I see GME is up 10% today. I don't expect a crash, but it's possible, in my opinion. Yeah, Brody, I agree. I mean, I don't think anything's outside of the realms of possibility. Like, everything is possible out there. How it actually would occur, that's a different story. Like, people a lot of times just have this like I know when I first started studying into this stuff, you got to think, like, what really exposed me to the New World Order, to central banking, to fiat currency, to all this stuff was the great financial crisis. Like, before that, I was just kind of, whatever. I didn't really pay that much attention to it. After that, I started paying a hell of a lot more attention to what was going on. And the more I studied it, the more I realized that, man, this is not something that is not, it's not only is it not easily understood, but then also, like, the idea that once you have wrapped your head around the idea of a fiat currency that doesn't last, like all fiat currencies fail, and you start to realize how this failure operates, or how the operation would go into failure, it's almost as if you think it's happening like right now. Right? The more you get, like, as the information comes so fast, you think like, oh man, this is really taking place. This is going to crash real soon. Like, I don't know how many people a few years ago said that we were going to go into hyperinflation and the dollar was going to be destroyed here in the next couple of years. Like, it was on its way out. And, to be somebody who was on my channel saying, no, right, this is not going to go into hyperinflation, and what you're going to see is the inflationary scenario coming back down to normal. People thought I was completely nuts. They thought, no way is that going to happen. They told me straight up, I don't understand the Fed. I don't understand money printer. I don't understand devaluation. I don't understand all this stuff. And yet here we are, right? Here we are in this situation. Lumber prices are back down to their normal. Oil is under $70 a barrel, right? I mean, gold is elevated in a lot of sense, but still silver never did achieve its all-time high. So here we have a situation in which that the dollar did not fail. I thought it was going to. Back during the great financial crisis, when the Federal Reserve was expanding their balance sheet, taking it from 850 billion to 4.5 trillion, the amount of money printing that was taking place on a percentage basis was way more than what we had experienced during COVID. But yet, again, if you're not familiar with how the Federal Reserve is operating, how their fiat currency goes into the system, and how much demand for their liabilities actually exist around the world, it makes it very difficult to see it any other way other than a hyperinflation scenario. But once you start wrapping your head around what it is that the euro dollar means, when you start seeing, like, even the BRICS nations are out there writing debts that are due in dollars, doesn't have anything to do with the United States. It's not owed to the United States. It wasn't written by the United States. It doesn't have anything to do with our government, our corporations, our investors, our people, nothing. But yet these are the BRICS nations who are writing contracts that are due in dollars. Those contracts get used as if they're dollars. Once you start realizing, man, this dollar denomination that exists around the world is not only like dominating the entire financial possibilities that are out there, there's very little room for anything else to ever find its way in to being able to compete against what the dollar is doing, because the dollar is massively bigger than anything else out there that performs the same task that it does. Once you see it, it's just like, okay, yeah, it's not just going to go away tomorrow. Like, it just can't go away tomorrow. And people are like, no, it's going away tomorrow. It's just like, so we're in two different schools of thought here. How is it that you plan on conducting yourself going into the future if you believe that the dollar is going to fail tomorrow? It means you have to be 100% outside of the dollar. Right? You would have to be in gold. You would have to be in Bitcoin. You would have to be in something that isn't valued in dollars. And everything is valued in dollars. So you're going to go and buy real estate. How is it that you're going to get out of the real estate? You're going to have to cash out for dollars. You know, and this is where I think a lot of people are just like, they don't really grasp it to the full extent. And that's really where I think a lot of it is, like, the confusion starts to take place. And statements like, you know, Elon Musk and Trump coming out saying, hey, we need to end the Fed. We need to, you know, fire Jerome Powell. We need a different way of doing things. But then on top of that, they don't really say how it is that the economy could operate, but that they themselves can manage the fiat currency better than what the bankers are doing. Right? Again, a dictatorship is fine so long as I'm the dictator. That's what a lot of these people are saying. What time is it? Alrighty, guys, I got 5 minutes. I don't care what it is. I will buy anything low and sell it high. Gold, silver, Bitcoin, houses, trailers, bikes, surfboards. I don't care as long as I'm taking baby steps forward and not backwards. That's it, Volkswagen van life. You know, that's exactly it. Chase the money, man. And it's not even really chasing the money. It's just being in it. Being like, if you are chasing, most likely it's going to run, whatever it is that you have going out there. But if you're just in it, if you're just in it and feeling it, man, like, you know, I had a buddy who would do very much that same thing. He would be on Craigslist, the Facebook marketplaces, all the other, everywhere he could go. And he would look for incredibly good deals, right? Incredibly good deals. And then he would call those people and talk to them and then try to undercut them even more. And he was just like, and his whole game was numbers. Like, how many can you go for? He says, you might make 100 offers out there and one person gets it, but that one person does it. So he's looking at cars, he makes ridiculously low bids. One guy is just in a spot that says, okay, fine, you know, I just need to get rid of this car today. He's able to pick that up, turn around and sell it. And that's all it is for him. He says it's just a matter of just doing it, right? Being out there, checking it out, watching, paying attention, and just chasing it when you see it. And to him, it was easy. I'm shocked at the ignorance around BTC. We're still early as hell. Oh, man, I mean, I don't think that, I think Bitcoin is incredibly volatile. So whether or not it's at 86,000 or 8,600, right? I mean, to me, it's just, it goes everywhere. It's all over the place. With the expectation that it's going to go to $1 million or that it's going to make me a millionaire, I don't have that expectation. Like that's not something that I think about. But what I do think about is the fact that it's limited. And anything that's limited out there, that is desired, that is being purchased, that people are excited about, that kind of has me excited too. That's why I like silver. That's why I like precious metals in general, is because there's a limited amount out there. It's useful and people are wanting it. If you have something that people want, you're going to be able to sell it. That's just all there is to it. And so I'm much in favor of Bitcoin, but I have very little expectations of what it's going to do for us here in the economy and being able to provide like a world reserve currency kind of status to it. I just don't believe that. All right, dollar's not falling, but 850 billion interest pay is approaching 1 trillion on a 4 trillion revenue, so 25% of U.S. annual revenue. Yeah, I mean, doesn't seem feasible that it can continue on, but then again, I thought that when I was 18 years old too. So sports cards are valuable. Yeah, you should ask Freddie about that. He knows. Sell, eat your profits before they snatch it. Would the taxation of Bitcoin redistribute inequality and wealth more evenly? No, because what you're going to end up doing is you have to think about this on a bigger scale than just here in the United States. Bitcoin is a global currency, right? And so if we were on a Bitcoin standard, regardless if we tax it, we are in a position in which that we don't import, or we import more than we export. So if we were to continue on with our standard of living and the way that we are enjoying it, we would have to continue on with these imports, right? Or else we would lower our standard of living and not enjoy the imports, not enjoy that foreign production. So if we lowered our standard of living dramatically, then okay, well then if we lowered it to the point that we had a trade surplus, then yes, right? I mean, the Bitcoin thing could work, but we would be an industrious nation, much more industrious than the rest of the globe out there, because we would want to export the stuff and import the Bitcoin. And in that sense, then yes, you could do stuff to trying to alleviate the Cantillon effect, right? But that's the fact that you would be even taxing on it to try and prevent it from occurring is showing that the underlying economic force is still there. That's why you have to do this other thing, this tariff or taxing or whatever it is you got going on. It's because of the underlying economic force that is existing there. So it's not the answer to it. It would be a symptom to the actual situation that is occurring. Right? See, I mean, there's no answer to this, right? See, people are always trying to figure out, well, what is the answer? How do we fix it? How do we make it right? You can't. You cannot do that. That is not something that you can do, because that's an external expectation that is going to fail in misery if you try to. It's much, much, much better to understand it for what it is so that you can position yourself in accordance to it, because we can't change it to make it fit us. Like, I want my job to be able to earn enough so that I can buy a house, raise my family, have a retirement, and enjoy it. Like, I want my job to do that. I think that government should create a situation in which my job does that. Does it sound like it's going to happen? Probably not, right? We are not going to go back to a position in which that we can have the government creating the environment so that I can have a job that does it. That's not the way it goes down. What we have to figure out is that our day job doesn't do it. How else do we bring more money in? What kind of business can we start? What side hustles are available to us out there? Because this is the way that you're actually going to be able to fight and survive inside of this world, because it's not fair. It's not meant to be fair. Like, people want it to be fair. We think it's fair. We go to school and they say, hey, we got to operate so that it's fair for everybody. But then you get out into the real world and you realize it's not fair at all. Nothing's fair. And you're out there fighting for survival in a way that says, man, we should have it be different so that we don't have to fight as hard. Hey, that's great, right? Tell that to the people out there who are kicking ass and taking names, right? They're not sitting around waiting for it to be fair. They're going out there and getting theirs. And that's just what most people need to, come to the realization of, is that government's not going to come in and make it easy on them, or create a situation that says, hey, what you are doing is appropriate. You have to figure out what is appropriate for yourself and then conduct yourself in an appropriate fashion. All right. You can absolutely fix this. The U.S. employs the BTC standard. This will put downward pressure on BRICS and upward pressure on the dollar. Confidence returns to invest in treasuries. No, because if you're on a Bitcoin standard, there would be no treasury standard. Nobody would want your treasuries, right? I mean, just the simple idea that there's a Bitcoin standard means that you're operating within Bitcoin, right? And now what that means is that you're going to have to operate, even if you were to have treasuries that were backed by Bitcoin, right? What you are going to have to do is you're going to have to be industrious enough to go out there and produce something to sell to people in order to get the Bitcoin to pay back your U.S. treasuries with, right? The United States has too high of a standard of living. We cannot manufacture and compete against people out there who are living in huts, producing the same thing, saying, hey, we got a much standard of living, and there's no way you're going to compete. So no, you can't return to a Bitcoin standard. It's very delusional thinking, right? Because what you are doing is you are ignoring the Cantillon effect. You're ignoring Gresham's law. You're ignoring a lot of stuff that's out there and just going into more of wishful thinking, and that's not going to work. All right, P. Nice, thank you very much. Happy Veterans Day to all who served. Yes, absolutely. Happy Veterans Day. See, I just got a message from my buddy who's asking me how the crypto's going. All right. Guys, I got to go. I got to go back to work. I would love to sit out here and keep talking, but I've got a job to do. And you guys are awesome. Let's keep this conversation going. Hit the like button. Come back and continue into the comments section. We have 275 people watching right now with 68 likes and $37.72 in super chats because you guys are always so supportive of the Uneducated Economist. I can never thank you enough for all the support and encouragement and everything you guys have done for the channel. But yeah, I gotta go. Uneducated Economist, you let me know.